Chapter 11. Fuckity fuck. Mackenzie resumed her pacing. Jake was taking way longer than she thought he would, and now the power had gone out. Not even yoga breathing was helping with the restless agitation consuming her. It wasn't so much the lack of electricity that was terrifying. It was daylight, after all. It was the idea of what it represented. How did the world function without power? Did you even still have running water without electricity? Spinning on her heel, she rushed to the kitchen, turning on the faucet and feeling lightheaded with relief when water spilled out. Out of habit, she flicked on the tea kettle and pulled a mug from the cupboard, only to realize the kettle wasn't boiling. Of course. Sighing, Mac slumped at the kitchen table. It was unnerving to be alone in the house, knowing only empty houses surrounded her. She was cut off from the rest of the town, and the distance created an echo of unease. When Jake had left this morning, she'd rolled into the hollow of the mattress he'd vacated, breathing in the wholly masculine scent of him. It wasn't a cologne, which she'd always found overpowering with other men. No, it was just Jake, a smell that had something warm and unbidden unfurling inside her. The idea of him, of them, was fluttery, exciting. It had her chest tightening with a delicious sense of anticipation. For the first time, cocooned in the warmth he'd left behind, she'd allowed herself to imagine the possibility of them together. And it felt right. God, it felt right. He promised he wouldn't be long. Resolutely, she stood and marched to the front door. Swinging it open, she hesitated on the threshold, hating the vulnerability that swamped her. Had it really come to this? She was a grown woman who was afraid to leave the house? Mackenzie jumped as a sudden electrical whirring preceded the lights coming back on. Well, at least they had power again. Buoyed by this, she stepped onto the porch, letting the front door swing shut behind her. Outside was eerily quiet. "Jake?" she called, walking down the steps and scouting up and down the street. Nothing moved. Turning left, she called out again, wondering if she was brave enough to enter any of the houses. "Mac!" Thudding feet on the sidewalk behind her had her spinning, arms instinctively raised in defense. She collapsed to her knees at the sight of Jake running toward her. "Mac!" he yelled again. "Where have you been?" she screamed, built-up tension exploding from her. Panting, he dropped to his knees to embrace her, and she shoved him away, getting awkwardly to her feet. "You left me. Again." Her throat was tight as she struggled to rein in a torrent of tears. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." His eyes were imploring, and his fists clenched uselessly on his thighs. "I got trapped when the power went out. I couldn't get to you." Gulping at air, she stared as he slowly got to his feet, reaching out until he gathered her trembling body into his. "I would never leave you," he whispered into her hair with a tender fervency. "I didn't know where you were." I know, he soothed. "Come on, let's go inside. I promised you eggs for breakfast, didn't I?" They ate the eggs, each hyper-aware of the other. Jake kept watching her as though he were worried she was about to have a breakdown, and she was jumpy if she couldn't see or hear him. A fact she didn't think she was hiding very well. Jesus, I need to get my shit together. "So the poor dog is still in the house?" Mackenzie asked. "I know you love dogs, and I feel like shit leaving it there, but it was vicious. I didn't really want my arm bitten off." "It was probably just hungry. I think we should go back and feed it." He looked at her dubiously. "You know I have some sort of weird affinity with dogs. Remember that cranky old lapdog Grams used to have? That fluffball adored me." "Mac, this was a guard dog, and it was good at its job." "We can't leave it there," Mackenzie said stubbornly, crossing her arms for emphasis. She didn't miss the way his eyes lingered on her cleavage. "Bring one of Quinn's hunting rifles if you think we need the backup, but I bet the poor thing is just hungry, and I'm going, regardless." "Why is your determination turning me on?" he groaned. "Fine, let me find a weapon and we can assess the situation." Mackenzie grinned. She'd always wanted a dog, but her father could barely feed her most of the time, let alone an animal. And when she'd moved to Chicago, her apartment was too small and her hours at work too long. She hadn't been exaggerating about her affinity with canines. It was almost uncanny. She attracted them, and she'd never met one she didn't like, or one that didn't like her. Mackenzie had found some questionable lunch meat at Quinn's and was confident she could win the animal over. She had a bounce in her step as they walked to the neighbor's house, Jake grumbling by her side. "You stand back here, and I'll open the front door, run back to you, and then we can call for it," he instructed. "You're no use as backup if you're in front of me," she replied. "How about you wait back here, and I'll open the door. That way, if the dog really is crazy, you can let off a shot to scare it away." His jaw ticked, and Mackenzie knew he hated the sense she was making. She hid a smile. "Fine," he huffed, "but be careful. Open the door and get the hell away as fast as you can." Mackenzie had no intention of running away. She knew, with a bone-deep certainty, the dog wouldn't harm her. That said, she wasn't stupid. She wouldn't try to enter the house, and she'd back away if it barked. Stepping up to the front door, she stilled and listened, but heard nothing. She knocked gently before swinging it open and taking a half step back, calling quietly for the dog. "Mackenzie," Jake hissed. She ignored him, concentrating on the steady click of nails on the hardwood floor until the dog appeared at the end of the hallway. "Well, aren't you handsome?" she murmured encouragingly. Coming toward her cautiously, the German shepherd stopped at her outstretched hand, sniffing. "Hey there, you hungry?" The dog sat back on its haunches, cocking its head. Mackenzie dropped the sandwich meat at her feet, and although the dog eyed it hungrily, it waited. "Eat," she commanded, and it wolfed down the meat in a single bite. "Oh yeah, you're hungry," she said, ruffling its fur and noting the tag on his collar read, "Dex." Dex whined and nudged her hand with his nose before turning and heading back into the house. When she didn't immediately follow, he looked over his shoulder and yipped, Okay, I'm coming." Jake joined Mac as she entered the house, muttering about how the animal could still be dangerous while angling himself in front of her. They found Dex in the kitchen, sitting in front of a cupboard, wagging his tail. Mackenzie opened it to reveal tins of dog food, laughing when Dex sat up on his back legs in a begging position. "This sure is one ferocious animal," she said.